Genuine question. Why was Jan 6 an attempted coup, but the 2014 Ukraine takeover was a legitimate revolution? Can you actually answer this, or are you just an establishment shill?
There is actually a really good answer, but the fact that you come at me with that energy means that you really don't give a what I have to say. The reality is that trying to figure out like what a coup is versus like what a revolution is, like it's almost like history is written by the victors. History is written by the victors is a statement that has never made sense ever. It doesn't make sense. That's not true. History is written by historians, people that dig through the archives, people that put together ideas of what happened. Like the idea that history is written by the victors is just not. It's just not true. It's not borne out. Why would we know about any of the bad shit the United States has ever done if history is only written by the victors? Wouldn't we just sugarcoat our entire history? Don't watch Oppenheimer from the first row. Jesus Christ. A sobering analysis of Ukraine's counteroffensive from the front. A military analyst just returned from touring the Ukraine front and has offered his blunt take on how the counteroffensive is really going. Dated July 20th by Howard Altman. I don't understand some websites. Like when I click this guy's name, I should be able to find out who he is. Why am I seeing articles he's published? Like give me like a short bio right here. But okay. A group of military analysts recently traveled to the front lines for a closer view of Europe's most brutal land war in several generations. Spending time with troops who fought through massive Russian artillery barrages, helicopter and tank assaults, drone strikes and minefields, one of them came back with a blunt assessment about why the counteroffensive is progressing slower than some anticipated. Franz Stefan Gady, a senior fellow with the Institute for International Strategic Studies and the Center for New American Security, says after his visit to Ukraine, it's clear the country is struggling with how to employ its forces. Once in the fight, they sometimes display poor tactics and a lack of coordination between units, all while having to cope with a still deeply entrenched bureaucracy, infighting, and a continued reliance on Soviet-style thinking. Then there are the Russians, who are putting up stiff resistance. Conversely, no one single reason, such as a lack of more Western weaponry, including longer-range munitions and additional demining equipment, is the cause for the lack of progress, the analyst argues. The narrative that Ukrainian progress thus far is slow just because of a lack of weapons deliveries and support is monocausal and is not shared by those we spoke to actually fighting and exercising command on the front line, Gady said in an analytical Twitter thread he posted Tuesday that you'll read more about a little later in this story. And of course, the US and allies have provided tens of billions of dollars in military aid so far, with pledges of continued supplies. Ukrainian officials, meanwhile, have pointed to minefields in particular as a key driver of the pace, but say that they're making slow but steady gains. Gady visited Ukraine with a group including Konrad Muzika, what the fuck, an independent defense analyst focusing on Russia and Belarus, and director of Rochan Consulting, Rob Lee, senior fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, and Michael Kaufman. We've read this guy before. Senior Fellow, Carnegie Endowment, and Principal Research Scientist, CNA. It's one thing to study conflict, said Gady, but getting to the war zone and talking with those doing the fighting there is invaluable. We formed an informal research group to get a better understanding about the war from the on-the-ground research, Gady told the War Zone Wednesday. We just think it is important to go there to really experience what's happening and talk to people to get a sense of the environment, get a sense of the people involved in this effort on the Ukrainian side, see the terrain, and so forth. Doing so allows researchers to always come back with lots of new insights that you can't get from afar, said Gady. We always come back with a lot of new data that we can use in our analysis to get a more accurate understanding of the conflict, so we travel to various parts of the front line. The visits took them to Zaporizhzhia Oblast and the Donbas, he said, declining to offer more specific details. I don't actually know where the Donbass starts and stops. Oh, I think the Donbass is, it's not this entire region,
Thank you for saving me from fascism.
No problem. But I know it includes Luhansk and Donetsk, so it's somewhere down here is the Donbass when people talk about the Donbass. I don't know how the fuck to pronounce that. So Zaporizhzhia? Zaporizhia? 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 I don't know, dudes. So they were in these areas, I guess, broadly speaking. These areas are the southeast of Ukraine. It's important for, I think Russia likes to control them because of the, people talk about the land bridge a lot and how Mariupol is important. Why? Because it connects to, what, Crimea? But they've also got, like, down here going into Crimea. When people talk about, like, the land bridge, what is the strategic importance again for, like, Mariupol in this area? Is it because these are, like, you have to build bridges here and they're more vulnerable to attack, or?
Thank you for being a friend.
It allows Russia to supply by land. Yeah, okay. So rather than getting the bridge in Kerch bombed or whatever, a land bridge allows easy shipment of supplies that aren't as vulnerable to attack, yeah. Rather than this itty-bitty tiny dick bridge. What the fuck? Go woke and go broke. The Sound of Freedom did 1.7 billion its opening weekend. Really? 1.7 billion?
A tiny, hypothetical living hell, would you rather lose your eyes, or both arms in your...
Probably my eyes. Democratic Party has lost support. The trend is heavily right-wing online. Okay. Gady offered the group's insights in a 16-part thread that is as insightful as it is concise. We spent some time this month visiting the front lines of Ukraine to gain new insights into the ongoing counteroffensive and the war overall. Here are some general observations. First off, we spoke to NCOs, officers, a number of brigade commanders, National Guard and regular army in the field, plus senior intel and defense officials in Kiev. What the fuck does a non-commissioned officer mean? What do they do? I don't know what that means, non-commissioned. Military officer who does not hold a commission. Non-commissioned officers should earn the position of authority by promotion through their enlisted ranks. What does it mean to be commissioned? What's a commissioned officer? In contrast, commissioned officers usually enter directly from a military academy, officer training corps, or reserve officer training corps. Oh, okay. So if you were to go to like West Point, and then you go to the military through there or whatever, you'd be a commissioned officer, as opposed to an NCO is like you start as a private and then you get promoted and now you're like an NCO or something, right? Is that right? When you get like, if you talk about like a 4-star general, do these people usually start as NCOs or do these people usually start as commissioned officers when you get to like the really big ranks, or is it like 50-50? Are most high ranks in US military NCOs or commissioned? People are all saying commissioned. Aren't NCOs capped? Oh, is that true? NCOs rarely go very high at all. I thought you're from a military family.
Thank you, saving me from being a wealthy artist. Now I'm just poor.
I guess I technically am, right? If my mom and dad were Air Force, but we didn't like move around a ton. I feel like when I think of like military family, I think of like people that had to move a ton as their family was like deployed. Is it considered a deployment if you're stationed domestically? Would you consider if you're from Omaha and you deployed to like a base in like Fort Myers or in Florida, would that be considered deployed, or would you just say like stationed somewhere differently? I wouldn't.
You should ask your mom, ironically.
My family was Air Force up until I was like, I think 12, 11, 10, 9. Probably when I was like 8 or 9. I think they were in the Air Force, but we never lived on base, and I never like moved around with them. Like I had like a military ID, a dependent ID, so I could like go on and off base. But that's just because you could buy shit at the commissary with no sales tax. But I don't know if I consider myself like military family. Do you ever consider joining the military, especially when your life was f***ed? Yes, I tried to, but I was under the weight limit. When I went to, I don't remember what it was. It was either Army or Air Force. I went to a recruitment office, but they said that there's a minimum
Being
weight
in the
to get in.
military is cringe.
And I was either 100 or I was 105.
Genuine question. Why was Jan 6 an attempted coup, but the 2014 Ukraine takeover was a legitimate revolution? Can you actually answer this, or are you just an establishment shill?
There is actually a really good answer, but the fact that you come at me with that energy means that you really don't give a f what I have to say. The reality is that trying to figure out like what a coup is versus like what a revolution is, like it's almost like terrorist. Like it's sometimes it can be hard to establish the exact definition. I think that I'm trying to think of like, would I consider like a coup is something that has popular support afterwards? I guess it's possible, but there were procedures that were technically followed once Yanukovych left the Ukrainian offices. But I mean, like, if you really want to call it a coup, I guess you could. I don't know if most people consider coups to have like popular support or not. History is written by the victors. History is written by the victors is a statement that has never made sense ever. It doesn't make sense. That's not true. History is written by historians, people that dig through the archives, people that put together ideas of what happened. Like the idea that history is written by the victors is just not, it's just not true. It's not borne out. Why would we know about any of the bad shit the United States has ever done if history is only written by the victors? Wouldn't we just sugarcoat our entire history like completely? Like I feel like especially in academia, especially in the United States, I feel like we might spend more time shitting on US history than like fucking any other country on the planet. That's a saying where your brain goes to die, is when you say retarded shit like history is written by the victors. Okay, yeah, it's stupid. That's a stupid statement. History is generally worked on by historians around the world that dig through archives and try to put together compelling stories and narratives about what's happened in the past. Yeah. Modern Warfare 2 ruined that phrase? Oh, was that in Modern Warfare 2?
Look at him, 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 look at him.
Nice. We're gonna read the rest of this Twitter thread. Counteroffensive. By and large, this is an infantryman's fight. Squad, platoon, and company level, supported by artillery along most of the front line. This has several implications. First, progress is measured by yards and meters, not km/miles.
The services have to be a bona fide business expense to be tax deductible. You have to 1,099 for services, not goods. 1,099 contractors have to be able to choose their own hours, otherwise they are W-2 employees.
Cool. Mechanized formations. Wow, Immunitech. Thanks for subbing, buddy. Mechanized formations are rarely deployed due to lack of enablers for maneuver. This includes insufficient quantities of demining equipment, air defenses, ATGMs, etc. What is ATGM? Air-to-ground missile? Oh, anti-tank guided missile. Ukrainian forces have still not mastered combined arms operations at scale. Operations are more sequential than synchronized. This creates various problems for the offense, and in my opinion is the main cause for slow progress. Ukrainian forces by default have switched to a strategy of attrition, relying on sequential fires rather than maneuver. This is the reason why cluster munitions are critical to extend current fire rates into the fall, weakening Russian defenses to a degree that enables maneuver. Minefields are a problem, as most observers know. They can find maneuver space and slow advances, but much more impactful than the minefields per se on Ukraine's ability to break through Russian defenses is Ukraine's inability to conduct complex combined arms operations at scale. Lack of comprehensive combined arms approach at scale makes Ukrainian forces more vulnerable to Russian ATGMs, artillery, etc., while advancing. So it's not just about equipment. There's simply no systematic pulling apart of the Russian defensive system that I could observe. The character of this offensive will only likely change if there is a more systematic approach to breaking through Russian defenses, perhaps paired with or causing a severe degradation of Russian morale that will lead to a sudden or gradual collapse of Russian defenses. Absent a sudden collapse of Russian defenses, I suspect this will remain a bloody attritional fight, with reserve units being fed in incrementally in the coming weeks and months. There's limited evidence of a systematic deep battle that methodically degrades Russian C2/munitions. What does C2 stand for? Command and control. The exercise of authority by a designated commander or person. Okay. Despite rationing on the Russian side, ammunition is available, and Russians appear to have fairly good battlefield ISR coverage. Oh. Attritable intelligence, surveillance, and recon. Intelligence, surveillance, and recon. Russians also had no need to deploy operational reserves yet to fend off Ukrainian attacks. There is also evidence of reduced impact of HIMARS strikes due to effective Russian countermeasures. This is important to keep in mind. Any potential tactical impact delivery of ATACMs. HIMARS are rocket launcher is a flexible, portable, effective precision fire system designed to meet the demands of the modern battlefield. Okay, missiles from trucks. Light multiple rocket launcher. This is, I imagine, these are the ones with the trucks that go, right? That shoot all the rockets, or... Are these missiles guided, or...?
The M142 HIMARS, or High Mobility Artillery Rocket Systems, delivered by the U.S. to Ukraine.
Ah, Metal Gear. They drive around.
Believed to become the game-changing weapon in conflict against Russia. The U.S. announced on the 20th of July that it was going to send 4 more HIMARS to Ukraine, which would bring the total number to 16, with the aim of eventually reaching 20. On New Year's Day, Ukraine used HIMARS rockets to kill a significant number of Russian soldiers within its territory. According to Russian authorities, the attack resulted in the deaths of 89 military personnel.
Russian forces, even if severely degraded and lacking ammo, are likely capable of delaying, containing, or repulsing individual platoons or company-sized Ukrainian advances unless these attacks are better coordinated and synchronized across the broader front line. Are you going to play the new Armored Core? Yeah, of course. Quality of Russian forces varies. Attrition is hitting them hard, but they are defending their positions well. According to Ukrainians we spoke to, they have been quite adaptable at the tactical level and are broadly defending according to Soviet/Russian doctrine. Russian artillery rationing is real and happening. Ukraine has established fire superiority in tube artillery, while Russia retains superiority in MRLS in the south. Mobile rocket launch systems, is that what these are? Multiple rocket launcher systems. Oh, which include like HIMARS or whatever, right? An additional influx of weapon systems, while important to sustain the war effort, will likely not have a decisive tactical impact without adaptation and more effective integration. Destiny, they have a few different types of missiles. At early war, they got guided short-range missiles, and I believe they have been given longer-range guided and unguided ones. Gotcha. Ukraine will have to better synchronize and adapt current tactics, without which Western equipment will not provide tactical decisive in the long run. This is happening, but it is slow work in progress. Most NATO-style militaries would struggle with this even more than Ukraine, in my opinion. The above is also true for breaching operations. Additional mine-clearing equipment is needed and will be helpful, especially man-portable mine-clearing systems, but not decisive without better integration of fire maneuver at scale. Monocausal explanations for failure, like lack of demining equipment, do not reflect reality, e.g. some Ukrainian assaults were stopped by Russian ATGMs before even reaching the first minefield. There's a dearth of artillery batteries that is difficult to address given production rates and delivery timelines. Oh, barrels. So far, Ukraine's approach in this counteroffensive has been first and foremost direct assaults on Russian positions, supported by a rudimentary deep battle tactics, or battle approach, and no, these direct assaults are not mere probing attacks. There's evidence of tactical cyber operations supporting closing of kinetic kill chains. That is cyber ISR contributing to identifying and tracking targets on the battlefield. Starlink remains absolutely key for Ukrainian C2. C2 is command and control, right? command and control, and then ISR was intelligence, surveillance, and recon. Quality of Ukrainian officers and NCOs we met appears excellent and morale remains high. However, there are some force quality issues emerging with less able-bodied and older men called up for service now. The narrative that Ukrainian progress thus far is slow just because of a lack of weapons deliveries to support is monocausal and is not shared by those who spoke to actually fighting and exercising command on the front line. It goes without saying that in a war of attrition, more artillery, ammunition, and hardware is always needed and needs to be steadily supplied. Western support of Ukraine certainly should continue as there is still the prospect that the counteroffensive will make gains, but soldiers fighting on the front lines we spoke to are all aware that lack of progress is often due more to force employment, poor tactics, lack of coordination, by the way, units, bureaucratic red tape / infighting, Soviet style thing, etc., and Russian putting up stiff resistance. Gotcha. These were Gaedy's take. Wait, oh, you really gonna summarize the Twitter thread that I just read? We asked Gaedy to drill a little deeper into a couple of the points he made. On Tuesday, Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley told reporters that the U.S. and allies have trained 17 brigade combat teams, 63,000 Ukrainian troops in combined arms maneuver, more on the pipeline. I need to, I don't know what, the structure, when somebody says Joint Chiefs, what the fuck are the Joint Chiefs of Staff? Are these, people that are nominated by the president or by the executive? And then they exist as, what is, the whole, composition of this section of the military? I always hear these names, but I don't actually know how they're. Okay, the chair. Wait, is there a nice graph that just shows me all these people, or? They're the ones packing the blunts. Based. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is the presiding officer of the United States Military Joint Chiefs of Staff. The chairman is the highest-ranking member of senior military officer in the United States Armed Forces and the principal military advisor to the president. Okay. But when we talked about, for instance, during the Iraq War, Petraeus was our lead general, right? Is that just of the army, or is that of all armed forces? What's the difference of oh my god, General Petraeus, David Petraeus was a United States Army general and public official. He was also director of the CIA. General is the most senior general grade officer. It's the highest available commissioned officer rank that may be attained in the armed forces, with the exception of the Navy and Coast Guard, which have the equivalent rank of admiral instead. Oh, organizational chart for JCS. Thank you. Okay, you have chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Then we've got chief of staff, Air Force, Army, Naval Operations, commandant of the Marine Corps. Wait, I'm so retarded. Wait, commandant? I'm sorry, it's not commandant, it's commandant. I thought these guys were part of the Navy. Are the Marines, they have their own thing? It's the Maritime Land Force Service Branch of the United States Armed Forces, responsible for conducting blah, blah, blah. Oh, the Marine Corps has been part of the U.S. Department of the Navy since 1834 with its sister service, the United States Navy. Oh, Department of the Navy. Oh. We don't have a commandant of the Marine Corps right now because of the Republican that appoints military promotions is purchasing any promotions right now. Base. It's like the Space Force to Air Force Destiny. Nice, okay. Okay, Director, Joint Chief, Director of Manpower, Director of Intelligence, Director of Operations, Director of Logistics, Management. Gotcha. Do we still play our place? Yeah, we got, I think, 3 drawings on there right now. Okay, where were we? Okay, on Tuesday, Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley told reporters that the U.S. and allies have trained 17 brigade combat teams. Okay. But Ukraine is having trouble on the battlefield executing those coordinated maneuvers on a large scale because of the compressed training timelines while facing off against one of the world's most powerful militaries, Gady told us. Ukraine is probably doing a lot of combined arms operations at smaller unit levels, but I think it needs to scale up, he said. The U.S. is probably expecting some sort of results with all the aid and the military hardware that it has provided, said Gady. The basic idea here was to train Western-equipped mechanized arms brigades and combined arms maneuver. I think this approach has had some setback. I'm not sure that it has been a failure across the board. I just think it requires more considered effort. Gady, however, is quick to emphasize that no Western type of military can really do this sort of combined arms operations at scale with the exception of the United States. But even the United States Armed Forces would have a very difficult time breaking through these defensive layers because no Western military in the world currently has any experience in breaching the types of defenses in depth that the Russians put up in the south and east of Ukraine. For a long while, since they first arrived on the battlefield for Ukraine, the M142 High Mobility Artillery Rocket Systems, or HIMARS systems, took on an almost mythical status for Ukraine. The guided multiple launch rocket systems munitions they fired offered a longer reach, about 50 miles, than Ukraine's existing MLRS or tubed artillery, and had a devastating effect, especially on Russian logistics nodes. But Russia has found ways to counter GMLRs S's, Jesus, Gady said when asked for a deeper explanation of what he said in this thread. Russian electronic warfare apparently has an impact on the successful employment of GMLRSs, he said. GMLRs. Russian layered integrated air and missile defenses seem to have an impact and actually managed to shoot down some of these GMLRs as well. As a result, I think it's fair to say that the HIMARS effect from last summer has been definitely over, Gady said. So I think we should keep that in mind when we think about other long-range precision-guided munitions that have been provided to Ukraine. Russia sooner or later will find a countermeasure to it. The insights offered by Gady and his colleagues offer a much more sober sense of the counteroffensive than what comes out of official statements from Kiev and the Pentagon. Asked some of his assessment, Gady told us the following. It's a grinding fight characterized by high rates of attrition, with Ukrainian forces making incremental gains, he said. There is still the potential for Ukrainian military success. Gady said that he and his colleagues will be providing additional insights from their journey in the future. We will certainly take note of about any worthy highlights. Wow. Oh, hello. A real engineering vid?
Nuclear power is the most powerful tool at our disposal to stop human-driven climate change in its tracks. Yet, powerful industrial countries like Germany have turned their back on this technology. Many of the most notorious nuclear meltdowns were caused by errors in coolant systems. Take the 3 Mile Island partial meltdown incident of 1979. The incident began with a mechanical failure in the plant's cooling system. It all started when the steam generator stopped receiving water due to a faulty clogged filter. The loss of water meant that the reactor's energy didn't have anywhere to go, raising the temperature of the reactor. As the pressure rose due to the water being boiled, a relief valve opened. A valve designed to only open for 10 seconds. But another fault resulted in the valve staying open, allowing the precious coolant inside the reactor to escape, pushing temperatures even higher. As the core temperature continued to rise, the reactor operators received conflicting information from the control room. The emergency water system that should provide extra water to the cores was blocked. 2 days earlier, the plant was closed due to maintenance, and the valves from the emergency coolant were closed. Unfortunately, they were not reopened when the reactor was restarted. The operator should have noticed that these valves were closed, but for unknown reasons, he didn't see the warning lights on his control panel.
On a cell phone.
One leading theory is that his stomach blocked his view of the control
Haha, American, yes.
on his control panel. One leading theory is that his stomach blocked his view of the control panel. Even then, the NRC, the regulatory body governing nuclear safety, had a rule that if the emergency coolant valves were closed, the reactor must be shut down. The situation at 3 Mile Island was in clear violation of those rules.
Wait.
While the meltdown was triggered by a mechanical failure, the situation was worsened by human error to direct policy decisions and funding for new reactor designs. They chose a total of 6 new reactor technologies and coined them Generation 4 reactors. Instead of using water as a coolant, Gen 4 reactors can use gas, supercritical water, molten salts, molten lead, or sodium to increase the operating temperature of the reactor. This increase in efficiency will result in less nuclear waste per gigawatt generated. But these designs also aim to increase passive cooling capabilities and limit nuclear proliferation risks. One of the most interesting prospects is the molten salt reactor, or MSR. In these reactors, the coolant and the radioactive fissile material are all combined. The basic premise of these reactors was tested and experimented with during the 1960s at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. In a molten salt reactor, the fuel consists of nuclear fuel, such as uranium or thorium, dissolved in a molten salt mixture. The salts typically used are fluorides or chlorides, which have high melting points and good heat transfer properties. The fuel salt circulates through the reactor core, absorbing heat generated by the nuclear fission. After it passes through the core, the fuel salt transfers heat to a secondary salt coolant loop.
Ooh,
The secondary loop,
I just watched
which
that
does
BMX
not
accident.
contain fissile
Rip.
material, absorbs the heat from the fuel salt and carries it to the heat exchanger. In the heat exchanger, the heat from the secondary salt is transferred to a separate working fluid, typically water, which then powers a steam generator. Since the coolant they use does not need to be at high pressure, like the water-cooled reactors in Fukushima, salt reactors are not at risk of high-temperature steam explosions. While light water reactors typically have a thermal efficiency of around 30%, molten salt reactors have been theorized to achieve efficiencies between 40 to 45%. Molten salt reactors also have the potential for inline fuel processing, which means that while the reactor is operating, the fuel salt can be continuously reprocessed to remove fission products and add new fuel, meaning the machine can run continuously without stopping for refueling. At first glance, you'll notice that the system needs not one, but two pumps. However, these reactors can safely cool down even when power is lost to these pumps. The salt's chemical properties naturally inhibit further nuclear fission as temperatures increase. The exact mechanisms of this depend on the salt's composition, but generally, as the molten salt gets hotter, it expands. This expansion decreases the volume of fuel in the core of the reactors, and therefore decreases the rate of nuclear fission, meaning the hotter it gets, the less fission occurs, helping prevent nuclear meltdown.
Satisfactory
A freeze
is
plug
waiting.
is also located
True, I need to finish that one game.
at the bottom of the liquid salt pool. The freeze plug is designed to melt at a particular temperature. In the event of an uncontrolled rise in temperature, the plug will melt and allow the fuel and molten salt to passively drain into cooled dump tanks. Molten salt reactors are some time away from commercial readiness, and that problem extends to all other fourth-generation reactors despite significant support from proponents of these technologies. The Fourth Generation International Forum originally proposed that most of these technologies would be ready by 2020. But based on the fact that the only footage available is from the 1960s, that has not come to fruition. Lack of funding and competition from low-cost solar and wind has held back development of these fourth-generation technologies. This problem is only going to continue until nuclear energy addresses its largest problem: cost.
What is this guy's mad? Molten salt has fundamental challenges that haven't been addressed and are generally glossed over in videos like this, and it goes far beyond not ready for commercialization. With existing reactors, all the nasty fission products are hermetically contained by the Zirc alloy cladding on the solid fuel rods. This lets us manage the waste safely and economically. We park it in a pool of water for a few months while the short-lived isotopes decay away. Then the fuel rods get cool enough for dry cask storage where they can sit for 100 plus years without bothering anyone. You can walk next to a dry cask without any risk. Dry casks are big concrete things that don't need any electricity or maintenance other than basic monitoring and security. Which is why many nuclear plants decide to keep all the waste they generate during their 60-year operational life at or an on-site parking lot inside their existing security perimeter. People obsess about 30,000 year storage, but the reality is that the vast majority of the radioactivity is released within the first 100 years, and the danger beyond that point is far less significant and less easier to manage. Fuel reprocessing gets easier when all but two of the radioactive elements are gone. SR and CS. CS, I think, is cesium. I don't know what SR is. Oh, strontium. If global civilization is destroyed to the point where we can't monitor a handful of unpowered dry casks, then the hunter-gatherers living in the detritus of civilization will have bigger problems to deal with than the few mildly radioactive fuel rods that didn't get their UN-sponsored pictograph explaining that radiation equals bad. For example, 9 degrees C of climate change is a far bigger burden to future hunter-gatherers, tribes, than anything we could do to our nuclear waste, or with our nuclear waste. Okay. Now imagine that the field is a molten salt. Fission products contain dozens of different radioactive elements. Some are solids that precipitate out of the salt. Others are solids that dissolve in the salt. Others are liquids. Others are gases that bubble out of the salt, must be captured. In particular, xenon-131 is a dangerous, short-lived gaseous isotope that's tricky to capture. When you call something like xenon-131, anytime there's a number after it, that means it's an element, or that means it's an isotope, right? And an isotope means it has a different number of neutrons rather than, right? Okay. And then 131 refers to the number of neutrons it has. No, that can't be the case. Yes? If xenon is atomic number 54, that means that the naturally occurring element has 54 protons and 54 electrons, right? 54 and 54 is 108. So does that mean it's got way more? I forget what atomic mass is. Does that mean it's like, it's the mass? Atomic mass is weighted average of all the isotopes of that element in which the mass of each isotope is multiplied by the abundance of that particular isotope. Atomic mass also refers to as atomic weight, but the term mass is more accurate. 131 refers to the total number of nucleons. Oh, it's protons plus neutrons? Is that true? Isotopes of xenon. Naturally occurring xenon consists of 7 stable isotopes and 2 very long-lived isotopes. Double electron capture is what observed in 124. And double beta decay. Nuclides of the same element, they have the same atomic number, meaning number of protons, and position on the periodic table, and it's belong to the same chemical element, but differ in nucleon numbers, mass numbers, due to different numbers of neutrons in their nuclei. While all isotopes of a given element have almost the same chemical properties, they have different atomic masses and physical properties. The term isotope is formed, okay. The number of protons in the element is called its atomic number, and is equal to the number of electrons in the neutral, non-ionized atom. Ions are... An ion is a molecule with a positive or negative charge, right? Meaning it's missing or needing, missing or has extra electrons, I believe. Each atomic number identifies a specific element but not the isotope. An atom of a given element may have a wide range in its number of neutrons, the number of nucleons, both protons and neutrons, the nucleus of the atom's mass number, and each isotope of a given element has a different mass number. For example, carbon-12, carbon-30, carbon-14 are 3 isotopes of the element carbon with mass numbers 12, 13, and 14 respectively. The atomic number of carbon is 6, which means that every carbon atom has 6 protons, so that the neutron numbers of these isotopes are 6, 7, and 8 respectively. It doesn't need to be a molecule necessarily, but yes. Are there I forget, are there elements that are isotopes? We had to I think we had to memorize, no, not isotopes, ions. We had to memorize all the ions for chemistry. Because you can do that, right? Are there like 80 or 90 of them, or are there thousands of them? We just had to remember some of them. I forget. Maybe that statement doesn't make any sense. There are a shit ton. Are there more or less than 100? Maybe we just had to memorize the maybe we just had to memorize, like, because it was less than 100 of them, I think. More than 100 easily, I guess. Okay. You're thinking of polyatomic ions. Really?
Thoughts on cold fusion?
Brr. Haha, I get it. Cringe. Xenon-131 is a dangerous short-lived gaseous isotope that's tricky to capture, so we just scrub the fission products from the fuel salt. Okay, that scrubbing is a chemical reprocessing plant, and the only examples we have of doing this are massive sprawling facilities that cost many billions of dollars and are the source of the vast majority of the difficulty to handle nuclear waste problems. Hanford, Chelyabinsk. It's an inherently difficult problem. Every chemical reagent becomes contaminated with radioactive isotopes, generating large volumes of low-level waste, much of it in liquid form. Each piece of equipment becomes low-level waste. Much of the processes have to be operated robotically. It's then difficult/expensive to maintain the now radioactive machinery or to fix problems. Oh, and there's a near 100% overlap with the technology needed to extract weapons-grade plutonium for a bomb program. So there's inherently proliferation concerns with commercializing any form of fuel scrubbing. It's also legal in the US. You have to get the law changed. None of this is easy, technically or politically, yet it gets hand-waved down to a single scrub the fission products sentence, while the trivial challenges with solid fuel rods are portrayed as some kind of disadvantage. Oh, okay. I think when you're breaking shit down, the problem is probably that you get like some, what would you say? You get some isotope here. We'll call this Xenon-131, I guess is one. And you probably, you break this down into two other isotopes or break it down to something else until you get to like more stable things that don't decay as much. But every single process, every time you break this down into some other combination of isotopes or elements, the chemicals used to break everything apart, all of it is considered waste. All of the equipment is becoming slowly contaminated. Every single step of this process requires like more machinery, more chemical additives, more pollution, more waste that you've got to manage, more shit that you have to. Makes sense. So that's what this guy's arguing, that just you can't simply scrub. The scrubbing part is not like an easy thing. It's a whole other process of supply chain or whatever. Destiny, the dude doesn't explain why the fuel scrubbing necessarily should mean liquid materials are handled. The salt isn't molten when it's processed, only when it's hot coming out of the reactor. Wait, what? He's just saying that Xenon-131, for instance, is a gaseous isotope that's tricky to scrub. Like, you don't want to just emit, I guess, Z-131 into the atmosphere. You want to capture this, but breaking it down into something that's safer to handle or can be stored somewhere is a difficult or tricky process. It sounds like what he's saying.
Since 2003, MIT has been conducting studies specifically aimed at guiding researchers and policymakers towards a viable future for nuclear energy. In their latest report, they stated that the utmost importance must be given to lowering the cost of nuclear plants. And thus, the most promising ideas seek to address these cost issues. While deep geological repositories, uranium reprocessing, and Gen 4 reactors had the brunt of work done during...
People are saying once salt is molten, it's hard to handle. What does molten mean? Does molten just mean like between liquid and solid melting point, or denoting a... Oh. It's liquefied by heat. It's easy to make a reaction, and xenon is already stable. You're moving into hydrogenation, and you're not going to be able to Google organic chemistry. Good luck. It's easy to make a reaction, and xenon is already stable. Wait, Barrett, we're not talking about xenon. We're talking about an isotope of xenon that is not stable.
During the 1900s.
131 is stable, according to Wikipedia. Oh, well then what's this guy's problem with Xenon-131? Xenon-131 is a dangerous short-lived. When something is said short-lived, doesn't that mean that the isotope decays quickly? Is that not what short-lived means? Or what does that mean? The longest lived is 131 MZ with a half-life of 11.934 days. I'm not going to be able to read this. They were meaning iodine 131. ChatGPT fucked up xenon for iodine. Oh, are these guys just doing ChatGPT messages at me? Okay.
New design concept started to emerge in the early 2000s. Small modular reactors, or SMRs for short. The goal of this design is to miniaturize reactors and convert them into small, standardized modules that can be fabricated in factories. This standardization could not only decrease costs, but inherently increases their reliability and safety as complexity is removed from the manufacturing and assembly while decreasing on-site construction costs. Small modular reactors work in much the same way as regular nuclear plants, but with smaller individual reactors that can work in expandable modules, gradually increasing the output of a power plant with cheaper factory-made modules, rather than building one large custom-designed nuclear power plant with 1,000 megawatts of electricity capacity. Making the reactor smaller also comes with the big benefit of passive safety. A smaller reactor has more surface area for heat transfer to occur in proportion to the volume of material that needs cooling, meaning natural convection cycles are sufficient to cool the reactor. As the coolant is heated, it rises due to its lower density, establishing a natural flow pattern that drives the cooling process. SMRs are not defined as one type of nuclear reactor or design. Rather, they are a family of designs that take advantage of the miniaturization of the technology. Because of this, no one SMR is like the other. Some use Gen 4 reactors, others use light water reactors. Currently, over 70 commercial small modular reactors are being developed. NuScale may be the most promising of all these companies. Their most recent 77 megawatt module is around 20 meters tall and 4.5 meters in diameter. Each of these modules is lowered into a water bath and set on seismic isolators. This makes sure that any earthquakes do not affect the reactor. All of the components needed for the nuclear reaction are fitted in one steel containment vessel. To create a larger plant, multiple modules are connected together. If power to the reactor is lost, control rods fall automatically in a gravity-driven mechanism, and the containment vessel seals its valves to isolate itself. The water from the core is boiled off as steam, but stays inside the containment vessel. Transferring heat with the outside cooling pool, the steam condenses and pools at the bottom of the reactor vessel, creating a natural circulation of cooling water inside the steel containment vessel. Within seconds, the energy and temperature drop drastically, and within a day, the thermal power drops by 90%, cooling off the last 10% over the course of weeks. And while this all sounds great, we are nowhere near commercial deployment. NuScale is by far the most ahead, but have only managed to create
Radioactive material with a fast decay rate is the safest because they will reach safe levels faster. Basically, the waste infused with slow decaying stuff is the more dangerous one, would get stored underground. I think, I'm just catching up on this cake chat. No, they are more dangerous because it can actually harm you. U-238 isn't dangerous because its half-life is like 4 billion years, so it's barely radioactive. No, I work at a storage pit in Finland. We don't store fast decaying stuff because it is safe and easy to let decay in water tanks. I mean, there's probably a balance of that, right? Decay is, oh, bro, dude, I don't remember fuck all about chemistry. Radioactive decay is just unstable. All forms of radioactive decay are just unstable isotopes. I say unstable. They're just isotopes that are slowly emitting, like, is it neutrons or is it neutrons and protons? There's like alpha decay, beta decay, gamma decay. You're the gay. Radioactive decay. Hold on. Radioactive decay is the emission of energy in the form of ionizing radiation. The ionizing radiation that is emitted can include alpha particles, beta particles, and or gamma rays. The reason why the radiation is considered ionizing is why? Because it emits protons or electrons that will turn other elements or molecules they interact with into ions. Is that why it's considered ionizing? Is because they add or strip charge? Just like the video was saying, the typical solution these days is to let the fast decay occur in water pools then shifted to dry cast nearby. It can be alpha, which is a helium nuclei. Beta is electrons, or gamma, high energy light. That's the ionizing one. Click the link below. Bro, I'm not gonna be able to read any of this shit. Okay. Type alpha, symbol 4,2 helium. Helium is 2, right? Atomic number 2. So is this an ice? No. If the charge is +2, well, explain what I'm looking at. Is this a helium atom with 2 extra electrons? Is that possible? Or is it stripped of 2 electrons, so it's got a positive charge of 2? I don't know how to read this. I don't know what this 4,2 means. 4 is the mass and 2 is the protons. Oh, so this is normal. 2 protons and 2 neutrons, no electrons. Oh, so it's not normal. An alpha particle.
Nuclear energy is the best was to go to get the cleaner energy starting with fission until fusion.
Thanks. That's exactly what your mom said when I... Helium without any electrons. An alpha particle is a helium atom with 2 electrons stripped from it. Oh, so an alpha particle is essentially, it's just a proton and a neutron, right? Okay. And the charge is +2 because it's missing 2 electrons. Okay, so is this radium? Is that even a real element? What does Ra stand for? Oh my god. And Th is thorium, right? Thorium. Okay, so this is an example of radium and thorium having alpha decay, and then this is what's created afterwards. So these are basically helium atoms with no electrons emitted, and then this is... Oh, and so this radium, this is an isotope, and the thorium is an isotope as well, yes? Because you would expect the top number to be about twice the bottom number on both of these, so like the original thorium probably has an atomic weight of like 180. Maybe? Bro, I don't even like this fucking lame ass shit. No, that's not true. I'm totally fucking wrong and retarded. Every atom is an isotope, even normal ones. Is that true? Every atom is an isotope? I thought it's only considered... No, that is probably true, huh? The atomic mass is just the top number. Wait, does everything is an isotope? The ones we call the atoms are the most common ones. Oh. So does every single element just decay over time? I guess it does, right? Is that why we date with carbon? I don't remember why we use radio. Oh, okay. But the decay is somewhat random per atom, but we can average it on, and we give things a half-life. Okay, so every single element, every single isotope in the universe has some sort of radioactive decay. Some isotopes are stable, some are not. Oh, so some don't decay ever? Everything has a half-life. Does every element have a half-life? All elements have half-lives because all elements can have radioactive isotopes. However, even the stable isotopes of an element can break down over time. Hydrogen is an element, the nucleus of which is made up of a single proton. The proton has never been observed to decay, and a current estimate of the half-life of proton is at least 1.67 times 1,034 years. So for all intents and purposes, hydrogen's half-life is considered infinite. Well, 1,000 years, that's a lot in human time. That's not a lot for universe time, right? But what would a decayed hydrogen atom even look like, though? It would just be an electron floating. It'd be nothing, right? Oh, this is probably supposed to be times 10 to the 34 years, huh? Or something. It's like 10 to the 34. That would make more sense. Okay, so alpha decay is when you lose a proton and a neutron. No, 2 protons and 2 neutrons. Is an alpha decay. A beta decay is losing 1 electron. And a gamma decay is losing the letter Y. High energy ray. That's a photon. Bro, where does the photon come from? So a high energy gamma ray somehow can hit things and what, break shit apart? Or electron capture is when what, an electron gets captured by something and then boom boom, inner orbital electron. Okay. And a positron is gaining an electron? No. Losing an electron? No. What's the difference between a beta decay and a... Or is a positron gaining 1 proton? Is an anti-electron? No shot, those are real particles. A positron, oh, okay. Is a particle with an electric charge of +1 e, a spin of half the same as electron or the same mass as an electron. Chemistry. Okay, cool. I don't know why we read all of this. It's going to help us with our establishment of Israel, though, for sure.
A 1/3 scale model of their power plant. Other countries like Russia, China, France, and South Korea have also invested in creating SMR technologies, but have struggled to find utility customers. Without potential customers, these startups will always fail in a capitalist system. Even NuScale has been dropped by some utility clients as their prices seem to have exceeded expectations. This poses a massive challenge to companies that rely on large-scale, standardized factories to achieve their key market advantage. To build the factory, they need customers, but they can't get customers without the factory. Thousands of reactors will need to be built before economies of scale can kick in, and in reality, the exact reason traditional nuclear reactors produce so much electricity is to benefit from the economies of scale. Building a 1,000 megawatt reactor reduces the cost per megawatt, and that's the most important metric in the electricity market. That's how you get grid operators to buy your electricity, by making it cheaper. NuScale's original price point was $55 per megawatt hour. However, due to inflation, rising steel costs, development issues, and many delays, the costs are now estimated at $100 per megawatt hour. In comparison, onshore wind and solar can be as cheap as $30 per megawatt hour. With the threat of climate change looming over us, we need to ask ourselves, can we rely on a capitalist system to fix a problem driven by capitalism? There is a distinct possibility that these technologies will never succeed without government funding. Energy generation is the foundation of every major world economy, and it is in countries' best interest to invest in these technologies. Nuclear energy provides energy security. The US is not alone in trying to develop the technology. China has embarked on the construction of a functional small modular reactor project here. However, similar to many nuclear ventures, costs have significantly escalated, with the SMR reportedly being twice as expensive in terms of cost per kilowatt hour compared to a traditional large-scale nuclear plant. Canada has formulated a 2020 SMR action plan to help bring down costs and have invested millions of dollars into SMR startups. Developing these technologies will need vastly more money than this, but it's a step in the right direction. Wind and solar are game-changing technologies that we could only have dreamed of being as cheap as they are today 2 decades ago. But we need every tool at our disposal to fight climate change, not just to decarbonize our energy generation, but to start fighting the effects of climate change, population growth, and global industrialization. From increasing demand for air conditioning, water scarcity driving the need for energy-intensive water desalination, to last-ditch efforts to reverse climate change with carbon capture. Energy is the cause and solution to our problems. The transition from fossil fuels, in my opinion, is the most pressing issue facing humanity. This is an all-hands-on-deck problem. We need our best minds working on it. And I see it as part of my responsibility with a platform as large as mine to inspire the next generation of engineers to work on the solutions. Where I try to inspire, I see Brilliant as the perfect partner for follow-through, for education.
Wow.
The courses on Brilliant are perfect for getting you prepared for engineering college, or for simply advancing your current career, from advanced mathematics courses to computer science. They even have courses on the very foundation of energy generation, electricity, and magnetism. Brilliant uses interactive courses that test your knowledge along the way, a platform designed to teach you difficult subjects in the most efficient way possible, using visual interactive examples, and they don't impede your progress when you struggle. If you can't figure out an answer, you can open an in-depth explanation and move on to the next section. These are likely the most universally useful courses to present and future engineers, but there are plenty of other courses on Brilliant: AI, data science, neural networks, and more.
Where's the history one? See you next time, bucko.